Hey, welcome, Duvid here. Happy Hanukkah. Me and Deshaun Markwell back for a year in review Hanukkah special. It's been a little while since we streamed last. Glad to have you back, Deshaun. Happy Hanukkah. I want to make sure everything's working. So you just let Deshaun tell us what he's been up to, and then we're going to start our program by lighting the Hanukkah candles.
Happy holidays. Definitely glad to be back with you, Duvid, with your audience. Just been basically living life, wrapping up a few things and looking for that next journey. All educationally based. And definitely enjoying this holiday that happens to fall on another festival of lights, which is Christmas. So definitely, this was my minor at the university, so I get to use my skills. And I'm about to recite this prayer.
Okay, so let's go. If you want, you can move in a little bit this way to be more on the camera.
Okay, I'm good.
Okay, so
hold on.
You could start the blessings. I'll light the fire, and then after you say the blessings, I'll let you light it.
Okay. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvoto v'zivanu lahadalit ner shel Hanukkah.
Amen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam sha'asha nisim le'avotenu b'yamim ha'him ovazamen hazah.
Amen.
Hanarut, hallelujah, anahanu.
Here, go to you, light them. Okay, happy Hanukkah, everybody. We'll Deshaun light in. If he wants to chant the Aner to Lulu, that's fine also. We can let him chant it real quick.
Hanarut, hallelujah, anahanu. Medalikim an hanisim. They al hanifalaot. They al hata sha'ot. They al hamilahamot. She ashit la avotenu ba yamim hachim bazaman hazah a yader kohanaf hakadoshim ve hal shemona yemer hanukkah hanerut hallelujah kadosh him ve'im lanu rasho lehish tamash behar Allah leru otav belivat bede la huda lishma o la hala le shima hagido anisa ve'a nifalaot ve'a yish atov ma'o zar yasha'ati laf na'a le shaba takom beit tafilati ve'shin toda nazaba le'it hakim hak tabe zi mizra hamanabe ez agamot bashir mizmor hanaka ha mizbah.
Okay, happy Hanukkah, everybody. So, it's Hanukkah. So, if you open the stream by lighting the Hanukkah candles, and Deshaun said some of the common prayers and chants that go along with the lighting the Hanukkah candles. We haven't streamed in a while. Thought we'd do a year in review. We got John Gishala tuning in. Hope to join in. I guess we are doing StreamYard, so I would, if you want to join us at some point.
Same to you, John, as well as Davey Boy. Yeah. I could be more precise, but you know what? I was a little rushed, so no biggie on that one.
Yeah, so there was a few, Jewish politics, U.S. politics, ideas that we talk about. We talk about quite often. We've streamed about before, and so we figure we do kind of like a year in review of the state of these various politics here in Detroit. Like Rashida Tlaib, the larger Jewish community, African American Jewish relations, politics, Trump, um, institutional Judaism, uh, sectarian Judaism, Israeli politics, like a whole host of interesting things to talk about that we might cover tonight. Deshaun, if you saw in the picture for the video, was just graduated Wayne State University. Congratulations! Now a college graduate, Wayne State University. My parents are alumni of Wayne State University. So congratulations to him for that. Whatever you want to say about that, Phil, please.
Well, it's just the first big step in a long journey. Like, I hope to do much more and learn a lot more and continue to reach out and connect with people, because, it's nice, but it's still a lot more to be done. So thank you guys, and thank you, David. And I will continue to be of service as long as I can.
Okay, so your media plan, you've been doing a radio show here for Wayne State Radio. We haven't streamed that much. We had streamed almost once a week for a few weeks in the summer, and then a little bit less. And then it's been maybe even a few months since we streamed. And I haven't been streaming that much. I would like to do it more. So I told Deshaun, treat him to lunch. He graduated university, and once we were together, okay, we'll do a stream, Hanukkah stream, year in review, and just talk about the state of politics. There's been a few interesting things that we've talked about here in Detroit. They got Partners in Torah, which is set up from one of the local yeshivas. So we're not officially part of it, but you're saying like people get together, talk in Torah, like an old school yeshiva chavrusa Torah study, but more set up to the demanding schedule of people here in this area. But we're always discussing these issues and trying to relate to Torah anyways.
I want to highlight one thing that has developed and happened since our last conversation is Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence set up an official Black Jewish coalition based out of Washington, D.C. So I thought that was very progressive in a sense to where I feel that the African American political apparatus is getting back on track historically to realign themselves with those allies that definitely carried us from post-slavery to the 60s, like at least 100 years from 1865 to 1965. So I think that was a great move on behalf of Congresswoman Lawrence, who's in your district, who represents the 14th. So definitely.
And my neighbor is on my YouTube page. I went to the Southfield Public Menorah Lighting, and she wasn't there. She was at the Detroit Public Menorah Lighting. Her office used to be right there at the Southfield Civic Center, so she came many, many years to the menorah lighting in Southfield. I have her on my YouTube channel multiple different years, but now that she's a congresswoman, her office is no longer in the Southfield Civic Center, but we are relative neighbors. She lives within a quarter mile of me. So the advance of her political career has been interesting, especially for people here in this area. There's some news in the Jewish community about an Orthodox, I'm sure it was a woman, but someone who wanted to run against her as possibly a Democrat. Last election, there had been a local good man, like attorney, doctor, who ran against her as a Republican, and I think he only got like 25% of the vote. Even the majority of the Jewish community supported Brenda Lawrence over, even the majority of the Orthodox Jewish community supported Brenda Lawrence over their fellow Orthodox Jew. And even if someone ran against her as a Democrat from the Jewish community, she's became close enough with the Jewish community over working with us for more than a decade that chances are the majority of the institutional Jewish community would back Brenda Lawrence.
Well, like in hindsight, in this year in review, it's been some developments. Like at the university, I actually graduated, but President Trump's new initiative to combat anti-Semitism on campuses actually was passed through executive order, and that means that a lot of the vocal movements to like boycott Israel through the boycott, divestment, sanctions movement are all going underground. It can be possibly, I don't know 100% because I haven't looked at the law, punishable by law now. So that's definitely a new development since our last discussion in this area. Like those representatives who are open and transparent and vocal about their boycott and divestment sanctions, like our Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib, who is in my district, which is the 13th. It takes upon a lot of new narrative about her future as a politician. Is she in violation of the law, through her support of the boycott, divestment, sanctions? So these are all new developments that, as the days go on, are going to add a new insight for all us to see.
Yeah, and I mean, it was in the news this week, Rashida Tlaib, who released a video in support of the platform, If Not Now, that made certainly the Jewish papers, but relatively probably not a big deal. Her support's pretty strong. Her opposition from the institutional Jewish community is also consistent and strong, but she's developing more support within the larger Jewish community who you're just not going to benefit the leftists, the Jewish community, to have all this infighting. So a lot of the players within the Jewish community have lightened up on their approach to her, although the institutional community is basically still consistently against her and would probably support an opponent or do anything possible to get rid of her. But I think I was just mentioning like Twitter followers. Rashida Tlaib has almost 870,000 Twitter followers. Andy Levin here has 19,000 Twitter followers. A local congressman, good man, I guess,
Yeah.
from a political family. He's only got significantly less than 20,000 Twitter followers. Tlaib's got 870,000. You think like she's probably got pretty good chances of winning re-election and maybe moving on to be senator, probably more than almost anybody.
Well, let me jump in for a second. Gil Medley wanted to address her Rashida Tlaib's deleted tweet. Basically, with Brenda Lawrence moving forward with the Black Jewish Coalition legislation in DC, like I think this is a old-fashioned political campaign now where the 13th district is now just waking up in a lot of ways. So I wouldn't be so sure if it's just a lock stock victory for Rashida. I think if she's going to be reelected, she has to fight for a spot because she just could be outmaneuvered because Brenda Lawrence, Congressman Lawrence, is a very savvy and long-term politician who has been elected multiple times. So in my opinion, I think a lot of that still has to be seen. I think she has a lot of populist appeal outside of her district primarily, but within the 13th district, I think it's an anybody can win situation. It's still yet to be seen. It's early, but at the same token, you will have to know the stats and the different strategies involved. So definitely, that's something to be watched.
I mean, I like Brenda Lawrence. That she's relatively my neighbor. I'm just looking at her Twitter. Brenda Lawrence only has 21,000 followers on Twitter. They say like her position is probably in pretty good shape. She could probably, keep the position of congressperson as long as she wants it and maybe move on to bigger things. But she has not garnered the national media attention that Rashida Tlaib. She's not as well known. And just, look on Twitter. She's only got 21,000 followers. Rashida Tlaib has 870,000.
Right. But see, the people that's like going to her Twitter page is mostly non-Detroiters on a national level. That's not going to do you any good within your voting district. Brenda Lawrence, on the other hand, should I say, excuse me for that, has people that are local. Like, I don't know exactly the numbers, but if I had to take an educated guess, I would say at least half of those people on her Twitter page are local constituents because let's just face it, politics per se, unless it's a national issue or like somebody that's in the news all the time isn't really all that appealing. But there's a lot of footwork on the ground behind the scenes by people like Brenda Lawrence who make her issues relevant and heard by those that matter. So, like I said, it's any man can win or woman game. You know, like there's no predictable outcomes in my opinion. So that's where I stand on that issue.
Well, moving forward, I would say, I mean, Rashida Tlaib has the most potential in this area. Just okay, I'm bullish on her and think she could move into the national arena and be a big voice, and even on the Israeli-Palestinian scene to maybe be able to affect quite a bit of change from here in Metro Detroit.
I want to address a comment by Gil Medley, like what you mentioned earlier, Duvid, privately about the attacks on religious Jewish people on the streets of New York by African Americans in certain neighborhoods that's starting to leak over in the press. You know, with the legislation being passed by Brenda Lawrence, Congresswoman Brenda Lawrence with the Black Jewish Coalition, I think from Detroit and our local Jewish community, the Federation is going to step in because we are the strongest and address that issue, because that's back to getting towards our original political alignment. I think this new focus, for better words like pro BDS support from Black politicians, I think the Black political voice was hijacked and now it's returning back to its original constituenship. So, you know, these issues, to me, if I had to take a guess at why it's happening, is all social engineering. Like, I wouldn't trust excuse me, any of the randomness of it. I would say that definitely this is a very concerted effort by those that's continuing to try to further that gap in communication and cooperation. So yeah, these are very real concerns. If you're the victim of any of these attacks or family members of the victims, then my heart goes out. But at the same token, I think that this problem is going to be correcting itself very soon.
Well, just for some analysis, say what you think about this. But I mean, it seems pretty clear as elections move forward, Bernie Sanders will travel around the country. He will garner relatively large crowds, maybe thousands of people in metropolitan areas, maybe even sometimes tens of thousands of people. And he will platform voices like Rashida Tlaib, Linda Sarsour, Amir Zar, like Palestinians, and basically everywhere around the country, Bernie Sanders will be able to find Palestinians, and he will put them as opening speakers at his events. And so how well Bernie Sanders does going into the election is unclear. But let's say it's predicted like he's not going to be the candidate, but he might be in the top three. And he might make it, quite a ways through the primaries. That he'll have hundreds of events where he'll platform Palestinian speakers under the Democratic large big caucus tent. So the question would be, if moving towards the election, the larger Democratic platform would include. So if it was like Elizabeth Warren or Andrew Yang even, or Tulsi Gabbard, whoever got the candidacy, if it wasn't Bernie Sanders, would they pick up these Palestinian endorsers of Sanders if Sanders endorsed them? And then all of a sudden would you have Elizabeth Warren standing together there with Rashida Tlaib? And that's questionable. Like if Elizabeth Warren would basically avoid Tlaib and just be like, or it's possible someone like Warren would make a calculation and would be campaigning together with Tlaib.
Well, what I have to say is that they're going to have to consolidate all their forces, because like the populist opinion is shifting more right. And for better words, 45 has a great chance to become president again. And just certain people that I hear just wish Bernie Sanders had just dropped dead now, because,
especially the Jewish boys. I mean, it's in
exactly.
The papers, the major voices in the Jewish community calling Bernie Sanders anti-Semitic. And basically because he's going beyond the democratic norm and saying by platforming these Palestinian people as a Jew, that's beyond the democratic norm. But it could be that that's really where the Democratic Party is already at. And once Bernie Sanders does it, then your other candidates who wouldn't have been able to get away with doing it will also do it. That, Elizabeth Warren campaigning with Rashida Tlaib right now is too controversial, and so she wouldn't do it. But Bernie Sanders, because he's a Jew, and all the eyes are on him on the Palestinian issue, he's doing it. So but once Bernie Sanders makes that acceptable under a certain element of the Democratic primary, that could provide the cover of someone like Elizabeth Warren decided that she campaigns together, with Rashida Tlaib, and then Tlaib, could emerge as one of the most powerful voices in the Democratic Party across the nation.
But what I will say, the oddball, which is a wild card, is Candace Owens, and there is a constituency of swing voters who are seriously considering moving more right, like amongst the African-American populace. The African-American community is approximately 12% of the U.S. population. And if the Republican Party, under 45 can get at least 2% of the population, that's enough to win the election. That's a significant uptick in new Republicans because, granted, according to the popular news media, there are some results being had, with low skill job decline, like it's like a lot of people's working, making money, as well as the professional set. So African Americans are totally rethinking a lot of their politics and political stance. So I would say that's something to watch because the Democrats themselves can't just depend on that historic blind vote. They have to be a little bit more careful. And, with Brenda Lawrence's Black Jewish Coalition that just newly became in D.C., as well as people like Candace Owens, I think that might be enough to put 45 back in the White House a second time because his numbers have actually risen. And I'm just being totally fair. Like I'm impartial, to the point, but at the same token, the facts are the facts. And I just want people to know the full spectrum of what's going on because, that is a real possibility.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. And I mean, saying that Israel going towards third elections, the Jewish question or demographic block being possibly put at the middle of 2020 elections with President Trump being like uber pro-Israel and the larger majority liberal Jewish community being demographically much more against Trump than the average American. That you could see the Jews come out at the center of this election, just like the impeachment, where you're just looking at the people, the names. Relatively, there's a very high percentage of Jews involved in the impeachment effort against President Trump in various things, which could be explained multiple ways. There's simple demographics, which makes sense. That just means that that's the mainstream Jewish American community. That's where we stand, even though there's an uber pro-Israel institutional branch of Judaism that is on the opposite side of these issues. But so that could cause interesting dynamics, like that relate to the potential rise of someone like Rashida Tlaib into this 2020 elections. So these things will all be interesting, moving forward. The immediate time, I still like Tulsi Gabbard. You're gonna have to wait till the first Iowa primary to see how these things start playing out and get some of the numbers. The debates, Gabbard didn't make it. Yang hardly made it. There wasn't really too much interesting, groundbreaking of the debates. The viewership kept on shrinking. I mean, it still make over maybe like 5 million people, but down from the original 20 million that watched the first debates. So it'll probably be a drain the rest of the election. Like less and less people, are they really going to get up to see Biden, Buttigieg, Warren, and Sanders debate about these things? Probably not. Although, so we got to see how they're going to vote, and there'll be a few months and we'll start seeing. And, once those votes start coming in, people, the political players will start getting desperate or start, really stepping up their activities to try to have their, way of life or their side win out. And, so right now we're still kind of stuck in the waiting game.
Well, yeah, the thing about the Democratic landscape right now is just so lackluster. For better words, Pelosi, the Speaker of the House, she seems out of touch, because if they was going to actually do something, they should have did it, because her withholding these articles, in my opinion, didn't do any justice for her cause. Like, it makes people suspicious. It seems like it's not together. And, I never thought I would have ever thought people like, what's the guy's, this was Mitch McConnell, the Speaker of the House. It made him look like a rock star, literally, because he just basically explained the constitutionality of the rules, which the majority of the people, including myself, wasn't 100% clear on. But I think she very much set back the process. And again, like I said, President Trump definitely is gaining major support from that, because that's a clear demonstration of a mishap and error. And definitely, this is something that's going to play out in the election, because, cities like Detroit in Michigan, the state of Michigan has always been a swing state. So people can go either way, and like, people don't want to accept the fact that the city of Detroit itself, about at least, I would say 1.5% to 3% of the inner city residents did vote Trump the first time. And I think it could even go higher this time, from 6 to 10 of the city residents in the inner city of Detroit can vote for Donald Trump, which is approximately 70,000 voters, which would be unprecedented. It could definitely go that way, because people really just don't have no faith in established institutions and the stories that they telling. Like, people is at an ultimate height of distrust for the system itself, and people is not willing to go back to where they've been. They want to continue to build up and go forward.
Yeah, there are going to be multiple converging factors, and on the right, and the Jewish Republicans like Turning Points USA, Charlie Kirk, the Groyper pushback, Nick Fuentes, and various things. Ben Shapiro now appearing on the same stage the same night as President Trump. Will Ben Shapiro start campaigning together with President Trump or something? You could see things like that happening. You could see an interesting possible rise of the prominence of Orthodox Jews in the Republican Party, at least on the national scene, while there being a pushback on the rural red area scene against diversity. So you have a rise of pro-diversity Republicans in red areas, at the same time as a pushback against pro-diversity Republicanism in red areas. But somehow that those Republicans will be able to find common ground despite their disagreement about diversity in Washington, or there might just be a complete standstill. So it's unclear. Like Israel going to the third elections, God forbid, could be foreshadowing of things to come to be in America. Impeachment of President Trump, the failure of our systems to be able to to operate properly, and possibly, God forbid, the breakdown of society that will put us at a huge risk. Of, God forbid, society collapsing, and you could see, God forbid, a disastrous potential. That things could just escalate and get worse. But same time, there's still quite a bit of hope. And things like almost look like they could be pulled together, and even under President Trump, if you're the supposed to be the great deal maker and manager, can he balance the budget? Simple things like that, like reasons like people like me largely gave up on him, even if you're saying, okay, like, he's our manager, he's not a rabbi, forgiving to these things, but like, can you at least balance the budget? And saying like the failure to even do one of these basic demands like balancing the budget. But when it comes down to 2020 and the coalitions start forming, and you're saying like, do you really want to sit it out on the sidelines? And it's like, okay, I prepared to sit this one out on the sidelines, like I usually largely done my whole life. But there'll be other people in the game that don't want to sit it out and might choose surprisingly sides that you wouldn't suspect.
Well, yeah, but I don't think it's doom and gloom. I think as the United States move towards more of an isolationist policy, America's unique because it's one of the few countries that can self-sustain. You know, we have enough land, water, military resources. So basically, it's not really dependent on too many others. Like, we purposely outsourced a lot of things, but we have the potential to draw back in, which is happening now. Like, you hear about the trade war with China. You know, they're more dependent on U.S. support than the U.S. is on them, for better words. China, all the other countries that depend on American dollars and goods and services. So, you know, I think that this is a scenario that people want to push for whatever reason, but I don't think that anything is just wholehearted right now. Like, God forbid, so to speak, for better words, that anything happens. I don't think it's going to happen right away. I think it's going to be a slow progression, but if things continue to be good for Americans, then I think the majority of Americans is going to feel unobligated to what's going on in the rest of the world. So I think definitely, like, we can self-sustain as a country, and it's not necessarily fair, but that's just the way things is going to be.
Yeah, due to multiple factors, it seems very unlikely that societies, not just in America, Israel, possibly globally, are going to be able to continue further, in democracy, just due to factionalism and not being able to form coalitions moving forward. Although that may or may not be so, and we might struggle along without being able to form these coalitions, and we'll see what happens. I mean, because there's a lot of things that are converging for good things, technology, new technology coming in through machine learning, artificial intelligence, driverless cars. I got in my parents' house running, this computer vacuum, the little Sharky that runs around and just vacuums everywhere. And but a lot of these technologies will be rolled out, and latest cell phone. I might be getting a new laptop soon. It'll probably have newer features, and just the streaming and these various things that are pushing society, changing in a direction, even while other parts of society are being ripped apart at the seams, and collectively humankind are falling into dangerous times of escalation of tension that could lead to God forbid, disastrous effects. And so it's always important to have these conversations and recognize these tensions and examine the causes of why they might be rising.
Right. And I just want to make a comment about, like, Rashida Tlaib in the African-American district in the 13th in Detroit. It's not going to be an easy sell for her to position Palestinian causes in the majority of African-American district. I think that the Black political leadership at this point in time has sold out, because historically Palestinians and Black Americans have not really shared any common interests. So that's going to be a point of contention with people like Brenda Lawrence, who is reestablishing those historic relationships. You can look at the public record is out there, Martin Luther King, blah, blah, blah. What was his relationship to the Jews in the state of Israel and what his views were. But I'm just saying, I just think that's kind of a political suicide for African Americans to embrace those causes, because as a historic minority, I don't think Palestinians ever really contributed to any significant breakthroughs for African Americans. And that's just politics. Politics is supposed to be doing what's in one's own best interests. And, people like Rashida Tlaib, from a lot of the Black voice on the ground, is seen as a co-opting agent and not good for the Black community. And I just think with all these little micro mini campaigns going on, that the uniformity of the dislike for her from various groups and entities can ultimately lead to her losing her seat. My prediction is I don't think she's going to make it past this first election. She's going to be a one-time deal. And, if she make it, then she definitely got to do a whole revamping, because African Americans is not going to be used as a political wild card when it's to her convenience, and that's, again, like personal relationships with the voters in the 13th districts. It's going to be paramount, and definitely something to be seen.
Yeah, no, I would predict possibly future Senator Tlaib, and if a Democrat wins in 2020, that very possible that Tlaib would get a high-ranking White House appointment somewhere. Um, so I would not. I'm heavily bullish on her. I mean, definitely you have the institutional black communities that would be unlikely to support Tlaib. She would have to do something. But if they've been weakened in the district, plus there's a decent amount of Arabs there, that if she could, get the Arab community around her, that's a decent block of votes.
That is true.
And then she could deliver to the African American community in certain ways. That that one thing, if she could become like a superstar. Brenda Lawrence only has 23,000 followers on Twitter. If Rashid could use her national celebrity to bring light to issues that the African Americans in her district care about, that she could probably be Congresswoman as long as she wants.
Well, let me address this point that Gib Medley said. Palestinian is no black Palestinian intersectionality. Like, that whole ideal is from a yuppie, elitist, liberal view, for better words. And politics can get ugly on the ground. The historic relationship between African Americans and Arabs has not been great in the city of Detroit. Let's first put the facts out there as they are. But yet, with hope being out there, anything can be improved. But at this particular point in time, things are basically status quo. So, I'm not going to have any confidence in that. As a 13th district voter, if I had to vote today, I definitely would not vote for Rashida Tlaib. And, it's prominent people out there who are going to mobilize against her. Like, if I had to guess, I would say one of our most prominent members is the Detroit Police Chief James Craig, for comments that she made in his office. That was seen as disrespectful across the board.
But she shook hands. She could have brought attention that, she could have secretly earned the respect of Chief Craig and brought attention to an issue that he knew needed attention.
Well, you know what? What's done in secret doesn't matter. It's all about what the public perception is. And
but I think that turned out good for her.
Nah.
At the end of the day, that was a win for her.
No, I disagree, because you know what? She didn't respect his office. He's been a police officer longer than she's been living, literally.
I think in her district, regarding
my district, which is the 13th.
Yeah, that was a win for her.
No, I disagree. I heard Arab American people that I know and I'm friendly with, one businessman in particular, say that she really stepped out of line. You don't confront the police chief in public when the news media is there and try to highlight or censor any of his activities as a professional.
Like the feminist new wave, squad. That here's this, this woman who is, one-upping the chief of police in front of the camera, saying, "You will not do this and get away with it." Because I say so. She and so said, I think that was a win for her.
Well, let me add this: she isn't on the streets every day risking her life. She's out in her comfortable home, wherever that may be. It's just a talking head versus a real person that's making a difference through merit in the community. And see, that's what's going to play out in the election. It can go either way. I wouldn't see Chief Craig himself as being a big endorser of her at this particular point in time. I just don't see it.
Yeah, but interesting things. I'm trying to read the chat. There's some interesting conversations, but I'm not sure the overlap or intersection what we're talking about in the chat. Yeah, Aaron, I think we're both reading the chat. Happy Hanukkah, Aaron. Light one candle for the Detroit Jews. Connected to Jerusalem. Jay showing up. If you're doing your big stream tomorrow, maybe I'll be able to join you there. Looking forward to that. Saying there's a schism between me and Deshaun. I mean, we disagree about a bunch of things. I don't see.
We agree to disagree because we both have our strong, passionate viewpoints, and that's healthy discourse. Because in America, that's becoming a lost art. So we agree to disagree all the time. That's intellectual. So. Good call.
Yeah, but we discuss these politics, and end of the day, will sometimes make a little effort to win the other one over to a certain point of view, but the people have different biases or reasons and can come out to different sides on different issues and say, okay, I don't choose my friendship based on their view on issues. Like a lot of my friendships are based on completely different things where they're just a common interest, and you could have countless different people where you have different overlap of common interest and things. So it doesn't bother me being friends with someone I disagree with, or that that even makes it more interesting. And the Edward Dutton study that he showed conservatives are actually more likely to have friends that disagree with them than liberals.
Yeah, and like I would respect the victor in every situation. Like if Rashida Tlaib actually won the election fair and square, then I would definitely respect that position, even though I wouldn't support it. But at the particular point in time, I am not going to cover up or like put a smoke screen in front of what I see in front of me. That's just not how I am. That's intellectually dishonest and, deceptive. And I just can't do it. I just happen to be on the ground level, and
that could be you're in that district. Although I think it will backfire of the Jewish community trying to meddle in that district. That say, whatever reason the Jewish community doesn't like having such a loud, prominent Palestinian voice in the Democratic Party, that rising up against her from a different district will backfire.
Well, I disagree. I think that Detroit has been a very localized city and like groundwork, like it's like Paul Revere. You could start a rumor or say something and the whole city will know about it. Like bad news travels fast in Detroit, and people, like even historic voters in other districts at opposite ends of the 13th in different neighborhoods had different reasons for not showing support to Rashida Tlaib. One elderly, a retired police officer, another retired police officer, other than the police chief who's active, but made a comment to say that I haven't seen her in none of the local eateries that the local populace hang at. And she hasn't had any type of direct community involvement. Everything has been contrived and organized. Like, yeah, she showed up at the UAW rally, in some other organized event where it's some type of publicity to be gained, but I haven't seen her on the ground level, period, or her people going door to door, knocking, meeting and greeting, signing petitions. I haven't seen any of that level of elbow grease and grunt work. So, yeah, like I said, it's going to be interesting to see. And,
well, if it's like Bernie Sanders comes to Detroit and they cross collaborate. So, when you had like Abdul Saeed, Rashida Tlaib, Linda Sassour coming, managing her campaign, coming from New York to Detroit to help manage Tlaib and Saeed's campaign, that 2020 with like Bernie Sanders, if he's doing well in the primary and he develops a team here in Detroit and they cross promote that, like Sanders, Tlaib, and, whoever's part of that coalition, that, you have to factor that in.
Well, yeah, that's what they're going to have to do to even have a fighting chance. And they may attempt, and I'm not saying they won't. Whatever the outcome is going to be is still yet to be seen. But at the same token, I'm saying trying to win over the city, like through genuine efforts, I don't see a lot of integrity there. And I'm just saying, as a conscious voter, I think about all these issues before I actually go and vote for a candidate. I'm not going to do the name recognition or celebrity thing. I'm going to do about who's the best qualified person for the job. So I'm just saying, I'm in a district by default, but even if I was a observer from somewhere else, I would definitely have a lot of the same opinions because, I just don't like, even in Dearborn, I know business persons and people who just are not fans of her, and that's interesting because these are our fellow Muslim constituents, so people you would automatically think would be all for her. The business community isn't so much sold on her. And I can say that from being on the ground level there because I'm just not even that far away. I've heard this from business people myself in Dearborn to say, no, I would not vote for her.
She's a divisive figure, but I mean, that Ilhan Omar and Rashida Tlaib would rise to be some of the most famous people in America.
Well, yeah, that's just a flash in the pan because popularity doesn't have anything to do with effective results. It does at certain points in time, but it isn't the determinant factor. I think the squad is going to be dissolved personally. It will be interesting to see what Ilhar Omar's fate is. Like, I don't study Minnesota politics or her district, but I do know what's going on in the 13th district, which is my district, and Rashida Tlaib's district. But I don't see her making it in a full-blown election, because the election that she ceded power was still controversial. And I think a good campaign by a challenger that's knowledgeable, that has a certain amount of name recognition, they don't have to be super popular, but just have enough face time and skill set. I think that she could be defeated.
Yeah, I mean, it could be. I see two things. You see a changing of the guard of kind of like your young Jewish activists. And if you're institutional Judaism supporting different people than your youth, that like, you're kind of like If Not Now and Jews for Justice and Voices for Peace type Jews are able to align themselves with a progressive element, and the progressive element becomes dominant in the larger Jewish community, that they would be able to be some sort of shift, that even though the institutional Jewish community is backing a certain type of Democrat, that the younger progressive element would be able to, kind of have a hostile takeover of the Jewish voice in the Democratic Party. And you could see that with, possibly, being ushered in with like the squad, the progressive Jewish element, Tlaib and Omar, that it's just a flashing thing in an election, or is it the start of things to come? And you're going to see all new type voices and speaking out, and the issue, what happens in Israel. Israel could take a sharp turn to the right, and American Jewry could take a sharp turn to the left, as like Bernie Sanders progressivism becomes the mainstream of the Democratic Party, that the Jewish community, that's on the left and maybe mainstream Democrat, might jump ship and say, now's the opportunity. We're going to move further to the left in terms of the progressive wing of the Democratic Party. As we're in Israel, they might be more likely to take a strong shift to the right, and that cause further fissures. And then you might have the Republican Party becoming the party of Israel, and the branch of militarism, and your militarized Jews, and further fissures. And it could be these fissures are, God forbid, lead to civil war, and are can't be healed. Although we could work through them, and it's tough to tell. There's a lot of uncertainty right now.
Well, I want to say that a lot of these so-called hip young activists are viewed in certain segments of the Black community as culture vultures. So yeah, they like elite attitudes that still covertly racist, because a lot of these so-called super liberal types, for better words, I don't see them really living amongst African Americans. And they co-opt culture. They want to be cool. They want to be involved. But even in cities like mine, like, you see them not really mixing with the local populace. And I think that African Americans are really starting to get hip to that, because certain individuals is not willing to be profited off of anymore. Like, the more conservative types are more honest in a lot of ways, because certain conservatives would just leave you alone and let you do your own thing if you got a little small business or you're going to school and stuff like that. So I think all of that's going to play heavy, because rainbow love is only good as long as nobody is sleeping with your lover. And I just think, like, the deception of Obama in the Black community, people is just not willing to hear it no more. And myself being one of those people, I'm sorry, can't do it.
Yeah, mentioning Obama, I mentioned to Deshaun, I'd spoken about a few times Week in Review, the Trayvon hoax, which came during the President Obama reelection in 2012, and the new documentary. And I think that guy probably is Jewish, but Joe Gilbert, who made the film, and however good his reputation is, unless the film is fraudulent, he seems to pretty clearly demonstrate that they used a false witness, that the girl, or Rachel Gentel, who testified on the stand that she was on the phone with Trayvon Martin, was in fact a half sister of actual woman, Diamond Eugene, and that he goes through showing how it was obvious. And it's almost unbelievable that all of America could have been tricked like that, because it was like a national trial. But according to the documents put forth in the movie, it seemed pretty clear that he had demonstrated that that's what had happened. Although we'll see in like the court case, and God forbid George Zimmerman, does that make any difference to him? I don't know, but I think it was interesting the pivotal role the Trayvon Martin case played in the dynamics of American politics. Looking back, was it, God forbid, like a hoax, in the sense that they really put up there a false witness in front of all of America to see, and went under the nose, something blatant where anybody who really thought about it would have been like, this is blatantly a false witness, to to that happening in front of the whole American public, and what that says about current possible racial situations in America, or criminal situations, or just media, where that Trayvon Martin case may have also been the case where it was just obvious that the media was lying to you, that there was information, you could have had different opinions on the issue, and crime and punishment, and who's to blame or fault, but it was just obvious that the media was lying, because the story like didn't match the few facts that came out. And then it comes out like it wasn't just like the obvious media bias, or the using of the media to spin a political narrative. It was like they actually used a fake witness, and and did it in front of all of America. And it took almost 8 years for that to come to the public light, that the biggest trial of the last decade had like a fake witness.
Well, nothing surprises me. The level of poverty that's been created through these so-called social programming, experiments. This is why Candace Owens is rising as a voice of reason, because, like they say, you can fool me once, shame on you. You can fool me twice, shame on me. But if you fool me 3 times, then I'm just a damn fool. And, this is just something that like I'm not willing to put up with. Like the so-called Clinton, Obama era, like when I first got out of high school and went through the university system, I didn't get any of the social benefits from none of that BS that they promoted. And I'm just not happy about it. I'm not going to sit up here and put my neck under a noose and say, like, yes, liberal. Like, I don't have to eat next to certain people, but definitely I want to be able to make my money from being gainfully employed and opportunities. And I think that a lot of these forces tried to co-opt the African-American community and jump the gun and discounted us. So the smart thing to do is come back and go in the opposite direction. You have to vote for your enemy's enemy. You know what I'm saying? That's the way you get justice. And I'm just saying that as a conscious voter. I would never vote for anything that historically kept me down. And that's just being those liberal policies, people piggybacking off civil rights who were not historical minorities, and the list goes on and on. And I don't even want to get into it because those guilty parties know who they are.
Yeah, Jimmy. So I'm not going to be too heavily, like, it is election season. I will be following it a little, but I'm more interested in my research. And, I did my stream with Claire the other day on the multiple truth hypothesis. I have a lot of Jewish research, some of it, Deshaun's also constantly doing research. And, that woman was saying in the chat, like everyone in my chat's basically a historian. And like, I hope that's true. Like, people watch me regularly. They probably like history. They probably like reading. They probably just like knowing about things. And, so there's a lot of things I'm looking into further, new genetic studies, understanding European Jewish history, American Jewish history, better ancient history, constantly studying that. Deshaun's been reading some books on banking dynasties, the role of Jews in banking historically in Europe, and even, generational banking houses. And all those are interesting subjects that keep us occupied in, terms of research. And, I'm always reading before I go to sleep. Usually, I fall asleep to reading biographies of the sages. It's not just like wisdom of the sages or commentary on the scripture of the sages, but just their straight biographies. And I found that like a pleasant thing to go to sleep to.
Yeah, and myself, like my litmus test is integrity. You could be whoever you are and wherever you're from. Like the African academic paradigm doesn't include ethnic bias. Like whoever you are, if you gain respect through merit and got good character, that's supersedes all. You could be man, woman, child, from wherever. So I just want to put that out there because I'm not racially or culturally exclusive in any way, fashion, or form. But I am integrity exclusive because I am not going to sit up here and pander to slime balls just because they control the purse strings. It doesn't work like that. Thank you, but no thank you.
Yeah, it's likely 2020. This year 5780. Both me and Deshaun are probably going to be moving more into the entrepreneurial business world. Deshaun just getting his college degree. He might take some more classes, but you might see him entering various businesses. And me too. I'm thinking might be expanding my real estate portfolio. You may be expanding as a landlord. I might be trying to stream more. Thank God I got my 1,000 subscribers. I'm monetized. I might be expanding my eBay business or various ventures, and reaching that age, like it's okay, like I'm gonna make that money. Try to build up that household, find the right woman, build up a family.
Very doable.
But yeah, it might be say okay, time for me to put a little bit more effort into business ventures than I have in the past, where I usually just put as little effort as possible into business world and monetary concerns that I need to cover my needs.
That sounds like a human being to me. Like this struggle for decency continues to be a constant. So I think it's going to be a lot more beauty gained out of life, but anything worth keeping doesn't come without effort. So that's basically what I want to say as I wrap this up.
Yeah, if there's any direct questions in the chat, you got free her. Not sure how much you're trolling or not, but now you get excited about the banking. Can you name 5 banking houses of Europe, the richest banking family? You were talking historically when the Jewish bankers were dominant in Europe. You're talking today.
Well, the first one was the Medicis. Obviously, the Rothschilds. Who else? The Warburgs. That's 3. Let me see. The people that started Deutsche Bank. That's 4. And
well, I mean, there's tens of them. I mean, like of main, like Jewish names. You had Cohn, Loeb, Warburg. I mean, the ones came to America. They weren't European ones, like Bernard Baruch and J.P. Morgan. So in America, almost like Lehman Brothers, Goldman Sachs. The majority of those were multi-generational Jewish businesses. In Europe, up to the war, there were definitely tens of large Jewish banking houses. I mean, the Rothschilds, definitely the most. The Warburgs go back further than the Rothschilds. There were famous money lenders and bankers, going back hundreds of years.
Well, yeah, the Medicis was actually the first international banking family.
I think even like Louis Vuitton Holdings now, even though it may have started, money from a business, but now is largely like an investment firm, now owns quite a few, like, things like wineries and various luxury things that they keep on buying things, but basically now have a banking arm. Now, like the Wallenbergs, obviously a large banking arms, but no, I'm not an expert in like European banking now. I know more like here in America, but the history of the Rothschilds is very interesting, and it's almost such an important Jewish family. On the Balfour Declaration, your World Zionist Congresses, charities to ultra-Orthodox rabbis, yeshivas. For generations and generations, they were on the forefront of Jewish leadership in Europe and Israel. So, like, to some extent, the history of the Rothschilds is almost part of the history of Judaism.
Yeah, but that's the typical like story. And upon doing research on my own, like I think a lot of that stuff is over exaggerated. Like, they might have been significant, but at the same token, it didn't come easy. So that's what I want to say, because according to the book that you lent me that I'm reading, a lot of that stuff isn't clearly defined. Like, this is just all speculation, but really actually what was kept is a whole different ball game than what was perceived to be had, so that's what I want to see.
I'm going to be doing some Ask the Rabbis, and one of the subjects, like I want to cover these difficult subjects, is the Jewish role in slavery. And you will see that there were very prominent Jewish slave traders across Europe and the Middle East for really like hundreds, maybe over 1,000-year period. That there were, anyone who's learned Talmud, knows that, because there's hundreds of pages in the Talmud that deal with slavery. So I'm going to try to take a critical look at that and see where that turned in America, the debates in America, the largely reform or conservative, the reformers that came out, strongest opposed to slavery, and so it's an important topic that requires more research, and so I don't have expertise on that, but it's something that's important enough. I'm going to try to dedicate a stream to it.
Yeah, that's well said. Like I'm pretty much done. I basically like share my opinion and what I think will happen. So I would look forward to another segment and see just how accurate I was. That's the fair thing to do, to see am I on target or am I far away from reality. I would like to definitely see, as the coming days come, as these events play out, what's really going to happen. So definitely I'm willing to come back and share that with your audience again.
Yeah, if there's demand for more streams, I'm sure we'll do it. But would likely, it's a slow news cycle right now, so the national political debate is not really focusing much on Detroit. That could change, especially as primaries come up. So, like, in terms of like the Jewish community, immigration protest, or stuff like that. Now it's the winter; it's getting cold. There's not that much activism. So, like, combining our in real life activity with the streaming, there's not that much political activity going on. Like, there's menorah lightings and irregular Jewish events, but on the scene political reporting pretty slow right now. If something comes up, like, maybe we'll get together a stream, and otherwise it might even be a few months till the primaries start, or some of the major candidates start coming to Detroit, or the Jewish community gets involved in major issues where there's communal events, that we have something interesting to stream about. But thanks for tuning in, everybody. Appreciate that. Happy Hanukkah. Be blessed. For the new year, and a person could always renew themselves and take a process of trying to become better people, and try to join our larger streaming community and pull our at least some of our energies, resources into creating a better community, and the clear talking through of ideas that are important to society. So happy Hanukkah. Thanks for tuning in.
Oh yeah, good night. Have a great holiday.